Rachel Dawson stared at the mysterious check in her hands, her heart pounding against her ribs as she recognized the figure written on it, $50,000. The handwritten note attached simply read, "For the accountant who saved my business. No need to report this as income." The crisp spring air filled the modest office of Dawson Tax Solutions as Rachel tucked the check into her desk drawer, uncertain what to make of it. She had built her small accounting practice from nothing, focusing on helping local small businesses navigate the treacherous waters of tax season. Her specialty was finding legal deductions others missed, and apparently she'd done exceptionally well for someone. But which client had sent this? And why such an enormous amount? Rachel pulled up her client list on her computer, scrolling through the dozens of local businesses she'd filed returns for over the past month. Tax season had been particularly brutal this year, with changes to the tax code that had most of her fellow CPAs tearing their hair out. But Rachel had always had a knack for numbers, for seeing patterns others missed. Her eyes stopped on one name, Pinnacle Roasters. It was a local coffee shop that had come to her just 3 months ago. The owner had seemed desperate, bringing in boxes of disorganized receipts and bank statements. She remembered him, Daniel Porter, tall, with warm brown eyes and a perpetual 5 o'clock shadow. He'd been dressed simply in jeans and a flannel shirt, looking nothing like the successful business owners she typically worked with. It can't be him, Rachel muttered to herself. The coffee shop was nice but modest. There was no way its owner could afford a $50,000 tip. Her phone rang, startling her from her thoughts. "Dawson Tax Solutions, this is Rachel," she answered professionally. "Miss Dawson, it's Daniel Porter from Pinnacle Roasters." His deep voice sent an unexpected shiver down her spine. "I was wondering if you received my package." Rachel's hand instinctively moved to the drawer containing the check. "Mr. Porter, yes, I received it, but I can't accept this. It's far too much for the services I provided." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "I disagree. You saved my business millions. A $50,000 thank you seems rather modest in comparison." "Millions," Rachel's voice rose in disbelief. "Mr. Porter, Pinnacle is a lovely coffee shop, but Pinnacle Roasters is just one of my businesses," he interrupted gently. "The holding company you restructured owns 17 different enterprises across the country. The tax strategy you implemented will save us approximately $3.2 million this year alone." Rachel felt her mouth go dry. "I don't understand. Your paperwork indicated—" "I know what it indicated," Daniel said. "I purposely didn't disclose the full extent of my business interests. I've had too many accountants suddenly change their rates when they realize what I'm worth." Rachel felt a surge of indignation. "That's not how I operate, Mr. Porter. My rates are my rates, regardless of a client's net worth." "I believe that now," he said, his voice warming. "Which is precisely why I'd like to invite you to dinner, to discuss a more permanent arrangement for your services." Rachel hesitated. She prided herself on maintaining professional boundaries with clients, especially male ones. Yet there was something about Daniel Porter that intrigued her beyond his surprising revelation. "Just dinner," he added, as if sensing her hesitation. "At Aloysius on 5th, tomorrow at 8. Aloysius was the most exclusive restaurant in the city, with a 6-month waiting list. "How did you get a reservation at Aloysius on such short notice?" There was amusement in his voice when he responded. "Let's just say I know the owner. Is that a yes, Miss Dawson?" Against her better judgment, Rachel found herself agreeing. "Yes, Mr. Porter, I'll meet you there tomorrow at 8. After hanging up, Rachel sat back in her chair, her mind racing. Who exactly was Daniel Porter? She typed his name into a search engine, and her eyes widened as the results populated her screen. Daniel Porter, CEO of Porter Enterprises. Estimated net worth, $340 million. Rachel's heart raced as she clicked through articles and photos showing the man she'd spent hours with, poring over coffee shop receipts, standing alongside governors and celebrities at charity galas. How had she not recognized him? But in those photos, he wore tailored suits and a carefully groomed appearance, nothing like the casual, approachable man who had sat across from her desk. The next evening, Rachel stood outside Aloyse's, second-guessing her outfit choice. The black cocktail dress had seemed appropriate when she'd left her apartment, but now, faced with the restaurant's intimidating facade, she felt underdressed. "You look beautiful," a voice said behind her, causing her to turn. Daniel Porter stood there, and unlike the photos she'd seen online, he was dressed casually in dark jeans and a navy blazer. His eyes crinkled when he smiled, and Rachel felt an unexpected flutter in her stomach. "Thank you," she managed. "Though I'm still processing the fact that you own a coffee shop when you're, well, a millionaire," he finished for her, holding the restaurant door open. "Pinnacle was my first business. I started it right out of college with $10,000 I'd saved. I could have sold it years ago, but it keeps me grounded." The maitre d' greeted Daniel by name and led them to a private table overlooking the city. Rachel noticed how the staff treated him with deference, but not fawning, suggesting he was a regular but unpretentious patron. Once seated with menus, Rachel couldn't contain her curiosity any longer. "Why didn't you tell me who you really were? Did you think I would treat your accounts differently?" Daniel considered her question while the sommelier poured them each a glass of wine. "In my experience, people change when they know what I'm worth. Accountants start finding special strategies that just happen to come with premium fees. I wanted someone who would treat Pinnacle like any other small business. And did I pass the test?" Rachel asked, a hint of challenge in her voice. Daniel's expression softened. "With flying colors. You found deductions I didn't know existed without ever suggesting anything questionable. You treated me like any other business owner struggling to make the numbers work. It was refreshing." Rachel relaxed slightly. "Well, now that I know the truth, I should warn you that my advice might change. There are different strategies for businesses of your scale." "That's exactly why I want to hire you full-time," Daniel said, leaning forward. "I need someone who sees the numbers clearly without being blinded by the number of zeros." "Full-time," Rachel set down her wine glass. "Mr. Porter, Daniel, please." "Daniel," she corrected herself. "I have dozens of clients who depend on me. I can't just abandon them to work exclusively for you." "I'm not asking you to abandon anyone," he clarified. "I'm proposing to buy your practice. You'd maintain your current client list, but Porter Enterprises would provide resources to expand. Additional staff, better technology, a larger office. You'd oversee it all while also handling my personal and business accounts." Rachel's mind raced at the possibilities. Her small practice had been growing steadily, but she'd been approaching capacity. The idea of expansion had been a distant dream. "And what would this partnership look like financially?" she asked cautiously. Daniel named a figure that made Rachel choke slightly on her wine. "That's more than I make in 3 years," she said when she recovered. "It's what you're worth," he replied simply. "I pay for value, Rachel." "You've already proven yours." Their dinner arrived, and as they ate, the conversation shifted from business to personal matters. Rachel learned that, despite his wealth, Daniel lived relatively modestly. He owned a penthouse downtown and a cabin in the mountains, but drove a 5-year-old SUV. He donated substantially to education initiatives and funded a scholarship program for underprivileged students interested in business. "My parents were both teachers," he explained. "They died when I was in college." The coffee shop was as much about honoring their memory as it was about starting a business. They always believed education was the key to changing your circumstances. Rachel found herself sharing her own story, how her father's small accounting practice had inspired her career choice, how she'd worked through college as a bookkeeper for local businesses, how she'd taken over his clients when he retired and built her own reputation. By the time dessert arrived, Rachel realized with a start that this no longer felt like a business dinner. The way Daniel looked at her when she spoke, the easy laughter they shared, the occasional brush of his hand against hers, there was something more developing between them. As they stepped outside into the cool evening air, Daniel hesitated before asking, "Would you like to walk for a bit? There's a nice view of the river from the park down the street." They strolled in comfortable silence until they reached a bench overlooking the water, city lights reflecting in gentle ripples. "I should be honest with you," Daniel said after they sat down. "I had business reasons for wanting to meet tonight, but I also just wanted to see you again." Rachel felt her pulse quicken. "That sounds suspiciously like you're mixing business with pleasure, Mr. Porter. Is that a problem?" he asked, his eyes searching hers. "It could be," she admitted. "I've built my reputation on professionalism. Getting involved with a client would complicate things." "Then perhaps we should settle the business aspect first," he suggested. "Will you accept my offer for your practice?" Rachel considered it carefully. "I need time to think about it. This would be a major change." "Of course," Daniel nodded. "Take all the time you need. The offer stands regardless of anything else that might develop between us." The implications of his words hung in the air between them. Rachel found herself drawn to him in a way she hadn't expected. It wasn't his wealth that attracted her, it was his humility despite it, his genuine passion for his first small business, the way he spoke about his parents with such reverence. "I should get home," she said finally, standing from the bench. "I have clients tomorrow." Daniel walked her to her car, maintaining a respectful distance. When they reached it, he handed her his card, not a business card, but one with his personal number written on the back. "For when you've made your decision," he said, "or if you'd like to discuss anything else." Rachel took it, her fingers brushing against his. "Thank you for dinner, Daniel. Thank you for seeing me as just a coffee shop owner," he replied with a small smile, even if it was based on incomplete information. As Rachel drove home, her mind was a whirlwind of conflicting thoughts. The business opportunity was tremendous, but the potential personal complication made her uneasy. She had always kept her professional and personal lives strictly separate. Over the next week, Rachel found herself researching Daniel Porter more thoroughly. His business reputation was impeccable fair practices, ethical standards, generous employee benefits. His charitable foundation had funded libraries in underserved communities and provided thousands of scholarships. The more she learned, the more her professional concerns eased. But her personal hesitation remained. She found herself picking up her phone several times to call him, only to set it down again. The memory of his smile, the warmth in his eyes when he spoke about his parents, the genuine interest he showed in her work, these thoughts kept interrupting her usually focused workdays. 10 days after their dinner, Rachel was working late in her office when the bell above her door chimed. She looked up to see Daniel standing there holding 2 cups of coffee. "I thought you might need this," he said, setting 1 cup on her desk. "Tax amendments are due soon, right?" Rachel accepted the coffee with surprise. "How did you know I'd be working late?" "Your car was the only one in the parking lot," he admitted. "I was driving by after a meeting and took a chance." "A meeting in this part of town?" Rachel asked skeptically. Her office was in a decidedly unglamorous business park on the outskirts of the city. Daniel smiled sheepishly. "I may have been looking for an excuse to see you again." The honesty of his admission disarmed her. "I've been thinking about your offer," she said, gesturing for him to sit. "And I'm interested, but I have conditions," Rachel stated firmly. "My existing clients keep their current rates for at least 2 years. I maintain final authority over client acceptance, and my name stays on the business." Daniel's face broke into a broad smile. "Done, done, and absolutely done. Anything else?" Rachel took a deep breath. "Yes. If we're going to work together, we need to be clear about whatever else might be developing between us." "I'm attracted to you," Daniel said simply. "I have been since you spent 3 hours explaining tax deductions to me with more passion than most people show for anything. But I respect professional boundaries. If you want to keep things strictly business, I'll honor that." Rachel studied him, appreciating his directness. "And if I don't," Daniel's eyes darkened slightly, "then I'd very much like to take you to dinner again. Not as a client or potential business partner, but just as a man who finds you incredibly intelligent and beautiful." The air between them seemed to crackle with possibility. Rachel made her decision. "How about Saturday, and not Aloysius somewhere normal people go?" Daniel's laugh was genuine. "How about the bistro near Pinnacle? Best French onion soup in the city and not a white tablecloth in sight." "Perfect," Rachel agreed, feeling both terrified and exhilarated by the path she was choosing. Saturday evening found them at a corner table in the cozy bistro, conversation flowing as easily as the wine. Daniel told her stories about his early days running the coffee shop, sleeping on a cot in the back room to save money on rent. Rachel shared her challenges building her practice after her father retired, how she'd almost given up during the first year when clients were scarce. "You know," Daniel said as they shared a chocolate dessert, "I never intended to become wealthy. I just wanted to make the coffee shop successful enough to live comfortably." "What changed?" Rachel asked, genuinely curious. "I developed a new coffee bean sourcing method that cut costs while improving quality. Other shops wanted to license it. One thing led to another, and suddenly I had a supply chain company." He shrugged. "Success snowballed from there, but sometimes I miss the simplicity of just being the guy who makes the coffee." "Is that why you still work shifts at Pinnacle sometimes?" Rachel asked, remembering how she'd seen him behind the counter when she'd first visited to pick up his tax documents. Daniel looked surprised. "You notice that?" "I notice a lot of things," she smiled. "It's part of being a good accountant." As they left the restaurant, Daniel took her hand tentatively. When she didn't pull away, his fingers interlaced with hers. They walked slowly back to where their cars were parked, neither seeming eager for the evening to end. "I had a wonderful time," Rachel said when they reached her car. "So did I," Daniel replied, his eyes searching hers in the dim light of the parking lot. "May I see you again tomorrow? There's a farmer's market I go to Sunday mornings. Nothing fancy, just local produce and good coffee." "I'd like that," Rachel answered, realizing she meant it completely. When he leaned down to kiss her, it felt both surprising and inevitable. His lips were gentle against hers, the kiss brief but full of promise. When they separated, Rachel felt slightly dazed. "Good night, Rachel," Daniel murmured. "Good night," she replied, getting into her car with a smile she couldn't suppress. Over the following weeks, their relationship developed alongside their business arrangement. Rachel signed the papers, making her practice a division of Porter Enterprises, and Daniel kept every promise. Her clients maintained their rates, her staff expanded, and her name remained prominently featured. Meanwhile, they discovered a shared love of hiking, spending weekends exploring mountain trails before returning to his cabin for evenings by the fireplace. Rachel learned that despite his wealth, Daniel valued experiences over possessions. He cooked for her in his surprisingly modest kitchen, taught her to paddle board on the lake near his cabin, and never once tried to impress her with expensive gifts. 3 months into their relationship, Rachel was working late in her new, expanded office when Daniel appeared at her door. "I have a tax question," he said with a mischievous smile. Rachel raised an eyebrow. "At 8 o'clock on a Friday night, it's important," he insisted, perching on the edge of her desk. "If I were to, hypothetically, ask my girlfriend to move in with me, would there be any tax implications we should consider?" Rachel's heart skipped a beat. "Are you asking me to move in with you as my client or as my boyfriend?" "Definitely as your boyfriend," Daniel replied, taking her hand. "Though the accountant in you might appreciate that it would streamline our joint tax filing for next year," Rachel laughed. "You know the way to an accountant's heart is through organized documentation." "Is that a yes?" he asked, hope evident in his expression. "Yes," Rachel nodded, standing to kiss him, "but I'm keeping my condo for now. I've worked too hard to give up my independence entirely." Daniel wrapped his arms around her waist. "I wouldn't expect anything less. Your independence is one of the things I love about you." The word love hung between them, spoken for the first time. Rachel looked up at him, her heart racing. "You love me?" she asked softly. "I do," Daniel confirmed without hesitation. "I love how your eyes light up when you explain tax deductions. I love how you refuse to be impressed by anything money can buy. I love that you saw me as just a coffee shop owner and treated me exactly the same when you learned I wasn't." Rachel reached up to touch his face. "I love you too. Not because you're a millionaire, but because you still make coffee for strangers and get excited about farmers' markets and value the small business that started it all." 6 months later, Rachel stood in Daniel's, now their penthouse, staring at the tax return on her laptop. Something wasn't adding up. One of Daniel's investment accounts showed an unusual withdrawal of nearly $500,000 2 months ago, but she couldn't trace where the funds had gone. Professional curiosity compelled her to ask him about it when he returned from his morning run. "Oh, that," he said casually, grabbing a bottle of water from the refrigerator. "It's nothing concerning, just a personal investment," Rachel frowned. "Daniel, I need to account for it properly. What kind of investment?" He seemed uncharacteristically evasive. "Can you just trust me on this one?" "It'll make sense soon." This wasn't like him. In both their personal and professional relationship, transparency had been fundamental. "As your accountant, I need to know. As your girlfriend, I'm concerned you're keeping secrets." Daniel sighed, running a hand through his hair. "You're right." "I'm sorry." He disappeared into their bedroom and returned with a small velvet box. "This is where the money went. Well, part of it." Rachel's breath caught as he opened the box to reveal a stunning but understated diamond ring. "I was going to do this next week at the cabin," Daniel explained, dropping to one knee. "I bought the land next to my cabin, our cabin. I'm building us a home there with an office overlooking the lake so you can work remotely whenever you want. The rest went to the ring and..." "Well, I may have set up a foundation in your father's name to provide accounting services to small businesses that can't afford them." Tears filled Rachel's eyes. "Daniel." "Rachel Dawson, when you walked into my coffee shop to help with those tax returns, I never imagined you'd end up calculating more than deductions. You've shown me that true worth isn't measured in bank balances but in how we treat others and what we build together. Will you marry me?" Through her tears, Rachel nodded. "Yes, but as your future wife and current accountant, we need to discuss your tendency to make major financial decisions without consulting me." Daniel laughed as he slipped the ring onto her finger. "I promise all future $500,000 expenditures will receive proper accounting approval." "That's all I ask," Rachel said, pulling him up for a kiss. 1 year later, Rachel sat in their New Lake house office, finalizing the tax returns for Porter Enterprises. The view of the water calmed her as she worked through the complex calculations that had once seemed overwhelming but now felt like second nature. Daniel entered with 2 cups of coffee, setting one beside her. "How's it going, Mrs. Porter?" "Almost finished," she replied, accepting his kiss. "And the firm, Dawson Tax Solutions, just signed its 100th new client this month," he reported proudly. "Your training program for new accountants is working beautifully." Rachel smiled, thinking of how far they'd come. Her small practice had grown into a respected firm that maintained her philosophy of fair rates and personalized service, regardless of a client's wealth. Daniel had expanded Pinnacle Roasters to 15 locations, but still worked shifts at the original shop once a month. "I was thinking," Daniel said, sitting on the edge of her desk like he had the night he'd asked her to move in. "The cabin next door is for sale. We could buy it, renovate it into a retreat center for small business owners. Weekend workshops on financial management, sustainability, growth strategies." Rachel's eyes lit up at the idea. "Combining your business experience with practical accounting guidance. I love it." "I thought you might," he grinned. "After all, you're the one who taught me that success isn't just about the numbers, it's about helping others understand them." Rachel saved her work and stood to wrap her arms around her husband. "When I agreed to do your tax returns, I never imagined where it would lead." "I'm glad you didn't know I was a millionaire," Daniel murmured against her hair. "You might have charged me more." "Absolutely," Rachel laughed. "Premium rates for difficult clients." "Am I difficult?" he asked with mock offense. Rachel pretended to consider the question. "Your assets are complicated, your investment strategy is aggressive, and you have a tendency to make impulsive financial decisions based on your heart rather than your head." "All fair points," he conceded. "But," she continued, "you're also generous, ethical, and you make the best coffee in the state. I'd say the balance works out in your favor." As they stood together overlooking the lake, Rachel reflected on how a simple stack of tax returns had changed her life completely. She'd gained not just a husband and partner, but a shared vision that combined her practical approach to finances with his entrepreneurial spirit. Together, they were building something neither could have created alone. Daniel kissed her softly. best tax season ever. Rachel couldn't help but agree. Some calculations went far beyond numbers, and love, she had discovered, was the most valuable return of all.